hello everybody, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to see you all, nice to be here, good morning. Right, so the title of this presentation, as you know, is the mathematics of the Mahesvara. And this is the Mahesvara, which we will come to later. This is, I'm following in the footsteps of our leader Peter here, who was taking us around beautiful Chester yesterday, and we kept coming up to these signposts and you go, oh yes, that's wonderful, we're going to go there, but we're not going there now. Well, we did go, and we will get to the Mahesvara, but
It's a beautiful golden brain.
That's right, absolutely. Now, in fact, what I'd like to start with is a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke, and this is from his Sonnets to Orpheus, which is very apposite because obviously Orpheus went into the underworld trying to rescue his great love, Eurydice. He wanted to bring her back into the upper world, the world of trees and rivers, nature, sun, moon, stars. And he almost managed it. And in a way, I think all our endeavours are a bit like that. We have questions that are really quests. The reason why we go on doing this is because there's something always within. Whenever we get an answer, then there is something else that another question arises. So there's this beautiful poem. I'm going to recite it first in German, and I think some of you understand German, and then I will give my more prosaic translation. So, Heil den Geist, der uns verbinden mag. Denn wir leben wahrhaft in Figuren. Und mit kleinen Schritten gehen die Uhren neben unseren eigentlichen Tag. Ohne unseren wahren Platz zu kennen, handeln wir aus wirklichem Bezug. Die Antennen fühlen die Antennen und die leere Ferne trug. Reine Spannung, o Musik der Kräfte, ist nicht durch die lässlichen Geschäfte jede Störung von dir abgestellt? Selbst wenn sich der Bauer sorgt und handelt, wo die Saat im Sommer sich verwandelt, reicht er niemals hin, die Erde schenkt. Beautiful. So what he's saying is, bless the spirit who loves to link us, for truly we live in shapes, and the clocks, with tiny steps, walk alongside our real days. Without knowing our true place, we still behave from real connection. The antennae feel the antennae, and the empty distance carried pure tension. Music of the forces, isn't every disturbance from you diverted by trivial business? Even when the farmer worries and works, where the seed in summer is transformed, he never manages it. It's Earth who gives. He's so good. He's so good. Rilke is all those sonnets. I mean, he's just so amazing.
The name of the person was?
Oh, Rainer Maria Rilke. He was one of the great spiritual poets of the early 20th century.
Last name, W-I-L?
The last name is Rilke, R-I-L-K-E.
Oh, yes.
Rainer Maria Rilke. So the reason that, so I wanted to have this, that I think this relates, is...
I should say to everybody that even though the English version was very beautiful, there still is a lot lost in translation.
Absolutely.
So,
Always a lot lost.
yes.
Yeah, always. Rilke, there are so many translations of Rilke. Once somebody actually discovers Rilke, you fall in love with Rilke and you want to translate it. So there are lots and lots of different translations. So that mine was, yes, I say a prosaic. I tried to stick, it was sort of fairly literally.
There are words like Eigenlichkeit in there that one cannot translate. You did your best.
Yeah, absolutely. So truly we live in shapes. And shapes are part of of fundamental of mathematics. So this particular shape is one that I come back to again and again and again. And here I'm linking it with bless the spirit who loves to link us, and truly we live in shapes, because the spirit who loves to link us is recognizing that we are all part of one great oneness, universe, godness, however we want to term that. And truly we live in shapes is because the German is wahrhaft, which is truly, and of course it's this truth which Kathleen Rain has talked about, saying myth is the truth of fact, which is a rather wonderful statement. But so it's the truth, because, and obviously in the Tao, the truth that cannot be spoken is not the truth, because the truth always is beyond our language. But the one way that the closest Rainer Rilke could get to it, and for me, or I think a lot of mathematicians, maybe the shapes are the closest that we can get to, and of course they're moving shapes. So now then, so what was I going to say next? With all these notes, I can 1, 2, 3. Have I now? Right. So I think I wanted to just actually state. Do I actually want to state that? Oh yeah, that's it. So I just wanted to state that my philosophy is Pythagorean, and Pythagorean philosophy is in fact the wisdom of love, which is of course how it's structured as we've structured it here. I've written geology, geography, biology, taxonomy, astronomy, zoology, biography. The structure, the second part of the portmanteau word is the one that then goes back to the first. So philosophy is philosophia, and philia is love, sophia is wisdom. So the true philosophy is the wisdom of love. Pythagorean philosophy is the wisdom of love. And just as mathematics is a Pythagorean term, there is an author who I've forgotten who says that the Pythagoreans were the first philosophers. So it suggests now, what am I going on to here? I'm going to talk a bit about how I see mathematics, because that is the title, Mathematics for the Lecturer, and then we'll come to mathematics. And So I think, yes, so that comes out of the poem as well, mathematics being the study of relationships and processes. And even, and all numbers are relationships. So even number, which in our, so often is thought of in a quantitative measure-like way, they're actually, relationships. And certainly, if one goes back to the Pythagorean number, which are the integers, the whole numbers, it's very clear, that they are coming out of the oneness. And this was, yes, this is the how anything evolves from, how things evolve from the great oneness is, of course, the great mystery, which we look at, which have, there are obviously, it would be very interesting actually to look at creation stories around the world and in terms of what they are mathematically, in fact.
What do you mean by that?
I think that will become clear. Yeah. And so we have, at the moment, sort of the main story that we've all been brought up with is the Big Bang. I personally think that in the beginning is the word is much more beautiful.
Really.
And
the most ridiculous creation myth of all, if you think about it. In the beginning, there was absolutely nothing. Then suddenly there was this enormous explosion.
Indeed. It does speak of Hollywood, doesn't it? Or something like cartoons or something. So, is it? Yeah, actually. So here, yes. In fact, I'm coming on to this now about why this is mathematics. So this is going back to the Pythagorean derivation. So it's tama themata, which means those things which have been learned. And can you see, John?
Yeah.
You can see that. Good. Okay.
Okay.
So those things which were learned, it was not technical learning. I mean, some of you have heard this. You've heard it all before, but some of you haven't. So because the Pythagorean school was, was not school as we know it. You weren't dragged along and shoved in and made to sit down. It was that Pythagoras was known about, and his wife Theano, in fact. And people came because they knew that there was something important. There was a way of thinking that was important. And they would come to where they knew these people were hanging out, and they would be the exoterici, the outer ones, because they weren't allowed to come in. They had to, they'd show up and they would be around, and they had to show that they were serious. Once they'd been around and, however, had shown their seriousness, then they were allowed to come in and listen. They were one of the acousmatici. And this is very interesting. They weren't observers. It wasn't that they weren't called the people who could watch. They were the people who could listen. But they weren't actually allowed to take part. And it was only when they had, again shown their worthiness, however, that they were allowed to come in and take part. And then they were called one of the esoterici, which is the inner ones. And the word esoterikos in Greek still just means inner, just like we're the inner ones of this room. The reason that we have this meaning of esoteric as being mystical and spiritual is because that was the nature of the Pythagorean knowledge, wisdom. And so when I'm talking about, actually, there might be another thing that's going to come up first. let's see. Let's take a look. No, that's something different. Well, yes, we were going there, but we're just going to take another little trip off on the side. So we'll just have a look at this one, which is, yeah, but it's again, like, if we think about mathematics, one of the things about mathematics, so this is like the Euclidean approach, you start with, sort of like basic terms that you think you can agree on, everybody, so that, because we have to start talking somewhere. And then you have like sort of basic axioms which are statements about that. And then you have postulates which are, this is what I think, and if so, then I can derive other things. And this is then you experiment or experience. So if you're going in the outer world, you experiment, which includes mathematically. Or you experience, and we all try to learn from experience, sometimes more or less successfully. And this then feeds back. It feeds back to what our postulates were, but also it can feed back. It can actually question our axioms, and it can question our very basic notions.
So it feeds back to create theorems, and sometimes it feeds all the way back to change the axioms.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's sort of like fundamental mathematics. Obviously, we've seen that with, Imre Lakatos went into that in great depth. That's the way that mathematics has gone forward. Is this how, by counterexamples and, obviously the end of the 19th century, the parallel postulate is one that everybody knows about.
If there's a foundation at all, the real foundation is the process.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why I was saying mathematics is about relationships and processes. And this is where, but we'll be going, because we're going in, I hope to go into this more in PANPA as well. We talk about Pythagorean 21st century mathematics. And I think that's the thing about Pythagoras now. One of the things about Pythagoras now is change, is process. Because his basic philosophy, or their basic philosophy, works beautifully in stasis, but now it's a different. We have a different appreciation, I think.
Before you change that, I'm fascinated by that first word.
Yes, what is it?
Koina. I know, it's lovely, isn't it?
Say it.
Koina.
So that's an.
It's a kappa opsilon.
Oh, it's Greek.
Well, yeah, actually, but it's not there. That's it. It's yes.
Is that Eta?
Koina. No, it's not. That's an N. You see, if I'd done it in Greek, it would have been a nu. In Greek, it would have been.
Can you write it in Greek?
Kappa opsilon. Nu alpha. That would be that's the Greek. So it's a nu. That's a nu.
Okay.
So yeah.
Got it. And is that something agreed? Is that the agreement that one starts with?
Those are the actual, basic terms that you start with.
So it's agreement on what the
yeah.
is,
So like points and lines. You see, you have to start with.
But and it does indeed feed right back to that.
Yeah.
And has to.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's before axioms.
Yeah, that's before axioms.
Yes.
So you have to agree. Well, we all agree that we know what the table is, or you know what I mean. You have to start somewhere.
I don't.
Well, no, exactly, and then yeah.
Sometimes you don't start exactly with axioms, but with some kind of method or procedure.
Yes.
Like you know how to count, and then you start examining what that entails.
Yeah. Can we come back to that? Because I really would like to. How are we for time?
You had 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Oh,
You
that's
had 20 minutes.
30 minutes.
You had 20.
I've had 20, that's fine. So one of the ones I wanted to look at, which is a slightly, it isn't. So we have some kind of vague idea of matter and a vague idea of consciousness. And basically most people would agree, so we could say, well, that matter and consciousness are of different natures. And so we could then go on from there. There are different postulates. We could say matter precedes consciousness, or we might say, and we could, if we want to think about it scientifically, we could say, what do we want to start with as a postulate? We could start with, let's say matter precedes consciousness, in which case let's investigate that. Alternatively, let's say consciousness precedes matter. Let's investigate that. We could say matter and consciousness co-arise. Let's investigate on that basis. And unfortunately, we haven't, I mean, most scientific work has been done on the basis of assuming that matter precedes consciousness. The big problem with that is that it's been an assumption. It isn't stated that it is actually an assumption. It's stated as if it is fact. This is what we have been.
That's known.
Although some scientists have come out and said, yes, this is the way it is,
Yeah.
and this is the great assumption.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Crick wrote a book about that.
Yeah. And then of course, so what's happened is like, so, I mean, it's quite funny, really. I mean, like sort of like for about 100 years, at least, there's been this, like trying to find out, how does consciousness arise, etc., etc. And they always believe. I mean, obviously there are theoretical approaches, but there are also obviously the whole kind of neuroscience as well, and which is kind of terribly like, sort of in the sort of like coming from the Renaissance, going into like there was this period of a few hundred years where they were going to find the soul by cutting open the body. Where did the soul come? So so I think, as I say, I think this is a slight diversion in that it's just, I think it is time to be, and I think some people are looking at other possible assumptions and how we might investigate those going on this possible, either the conscious preceding matter and matter and conscious co-arising. There were ages, if one goes back in the ANPA annals, there were some people, I think, I was going to say guys, and I think they were guys in fact, who were talking about, matter and consciousness co-arising, like, conscious atoms or something. So, I think there's stuff back there which actually might be quite interesting to look at. Now then, so, I think I'm coming to answer your question, Leon. So I just want to be clear that sign and symbol are different, and it's really difficult because people talk about symbolic mathematics, and this is it's a very simple difference. A sign is one-to-one, and a symbol is one-to-many. And this was where, in fact, like I disagreed with what I didn't, Andrew, when you were looking at the naught and saying, it's kind of like bland or something. People can't describe it. People can't describe it, but it is a symbol, and it's very interesting that, so this O, has come to be the symbol for naught, for zero. It was. I mean, there were two main contenders, actually, which were interesting ones. One was a dot, and the other one was this complete shape.
So you mean that a sign is like a little gadget that you can just use for itself to put it in various places? Whereas if I write down 3 as the symbol for the number 3, it refers to all triplets.
Well, no, not just that. I mean, it's actually, they are actually powerful. I mean, visual visual.
Powerful indeed, but
Yeah.
it's the sense of reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
The symbol has a sense of reference
Yeah.
associated with it. And a sign can be operated mechanically. It doesn't have to know.
Yeah.
Just by rules, one doesn't have to know the reference.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a much more limited thing.
But of course, sign and symbol go together.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
The word sign, it is a sign, but it's also a symbol.
Exactly.
Of the fact that there's a curve coming out.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, no. The fact is that's the sign of it. But the way that whatever we use for a sign has symbolic content. So people will and it might impact differently according to, because the symbolic content is very much to do with context.
To an idea cloud.
Yeah. Cloud is a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Is this what Peirce calls icons then? Are you saying that a sign? Because he's got icons, indexes, and signs.
Who had?
Peirce.
Aha. Yeah. Oh, really? Well, no. I would. Yeah, I would like to know more about that. Yeah. No, that would be that. Yeah, that would be good. Can I just go back to, because this is really, in a way, what you were asking about what might I mean about the mathematics, and what I wanted to point out is that when new mathematical ideas enter, they mostly enter naked, without symbol or sign. They come in as these vague cloud ideas, and this you were talking about that a bit yesterday, Lou. The fact that so the mathematics that we have now is, that tend to think people that if most people think about mathematics as being, like long strings of equations and kind of like with these weird signs. Yeah, and it's all in signs. If you go back, just the mathematics that we have. If you go back 500 years, well, the symbol for equals was in the 17th century that it was established. Yeah. 16 something, wasn't it?
Oh, 16th century.
Was it? It was 1500 something, was it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I put down these two lines to designate equals, because what could be more equal than these two lines?
That's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. But before that, for a long time, and mostly it would be AEQ, because it was IQUAT, it was the Latin, is equal to, and it came out of verbal language, and as Lou was saying, and Nick was talking about category theory that came in, what did you say, 40 years ago or something?
It's 80 years ago now.
It was
70 years.
70 years ago.
Yeah, 1940.
And that was, so initially they had these kind of ideas, and
yes.
they were looking for symbols and signs and ways to do it, and it's still category theory has been developing into these shapes that.
Yes, and the equal sign has to be used very carefully in category theory, to give the levels, to satisfy the levels. So that's why we tend to use isomorphic,
right,
indistinguishable from, rather than equals.
Yes.
But people still do use the equal sign.
Right.
But I think the pure category theory way is to use the isomorphism.
Yeah.
1557.
Thank you.
Was he the Northumberland guy when he was sponsored by Duke of Northumberland?
No, that was Harriet.
Oh, that was, yes, it was.
This is an earlier generation.
Okay.
So to answer you, Leon, because we'll get on to, in terms of like what might that mean to look at creation stories as mathematics? I don't know, but they are all about how things come out of the oneness. And so they're about how things come out of the oneness and how things then proceed. And this is, all your work with stories, I think, is essentially a mathematics.
It is.
You know.
Yeah.
I've developed a thing to show how prime numbers can be. Anyway, this is
The thing is that mathematics contains different levels of story, and one of the kinds of stories that it contains again and again is how particularities are coming out of something which is one.
Yeah.
Geometry is always unified to begin with in some sense,
Yeah.
and then its particularities come out of that.
Exactly.
And same with topology.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, oh yeah. No, it's beautiful.
So when you're talking about these new mathematical ideas that are entering, and that they don't have a symbol or sign, that they're naked, is there not a self-reference as well to these ideas, that the idea refers to itself, which refers to itself? So is it still a kind of a one-to-one, or is it not using that at all? Is it just the idea of it that's preceding even mapping to begin with, or I don't know?
Well, you may give your answer, John. We'll see how it aligns to my answer.
Well, this is a personal answer. I'm sure it's quite different. Nonetheless, when these things do arise, when the new mathematical symbol does arise, it is indeed at first without form, that is self-referential, and that one knows what one's trying to say. Then one has an opportunity to try and put it into a symbol. Now, I think it's very interesting what Nicola said about the two different competing zeros, for example. Because the zero which has nothing at the centre, which is the one we use, and the one which goes to something which still has content but becomes small, are actually different theoretical concepts of zero now. And there should be two zeros, because those things separate in their form to give different ideas, a class of ideas. But to develop a new mathematics, one has the opportunity to try and make that symbol fit the imagined referential form. And I could draw at some stage in new mathematics I needed to develop the relations of rotations within rotations within rotations, for which I had to develop a new mathematics, which I use for thinking, which is useless to anybody else because I'm the only one who knows what I mean. But I draw these things, and people have pictures of my maths.
And Roger Penrose
yes.
does a lot of that.
He does, and we indeed had this very discussion. And
right.
very interesting, lovely
Yeah.
discussion that was. So when it does arise, then it is of that formless thing. And in fact, as you're developing the mathematical symbols, those mathematical symbols themselves then influence the mathematics that one is developing. That they even change the way that you're thinking about it. As I just said for the zero between the point and the emptiness.
Exactly.
Because it's thought being created. It's a means of thinking. Mathematics is a language.
Yeah.
And you're developing a language to say things that otherwise could not be said.
And you can see it because and that process is an art as well, and it's like
it's
art.
Absolute art.
In terms,
fundamental creation.
In a way that the fact, because you said, well, you know what you're wanting, but I think sometimes you don't know precisely, and that's why when you start putting it out, that there is then that feedback, that how you've represented it in some way, then forces a certain direction, and you might then think, actually that isn't really capturing the whole thing of whatever.
It's not that it forces a direction.
Well, when I say, I'm using, I mean, actually, oh golly, we're going to something that's like
or a volume or a mind. It's like something exists that didn't exist.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the idea comes in, an idea starts to come in, and this is where I think. So my view of this self-reference is to do with the greater self. I think, and I think that these two symbols we have for, that now have separated, but initially the continuous closed circuit and the dot are two different ideas. But the closed circuit it has this sense of being the whole, and that's like comes to this relationship between infinity and zero, which is very important in normal mathematics and in spiritual mathematics, clearly. Okie dokie, let's come back. So, I think
one comment. You can notice that in mathematics there are certain things which are never quite formalized, that it's still beyond having the good symbol or the good sign for it.
Yeah.
And you could even make a list of them that might be helpful. But continuity, for example, continuity is something which we have formalized in a lot of ways. None of it is good.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting idea. That's lovely. Oh, yeah, goody. Oh, yeah, so that's it. Back to this lovely symbol. So, yes, as you're saying, so mathematics is a language. And this is one of my sort of things that I go back to, which is, reality is greater than language, which is greater than reason, which is greater than logic, and mathematics is a language. And this is, so I've done this, you see this, in its most Euclidean form, this is the Vesica Piscis. So it would be, in the Euclidean form, it's two circles which intersect, where the centre of one is on the circumference of the other. And this is it's a very beautiful symbol, and you find it, actually it's interesting that you talked about icons, Mark, because you find it in churches. You find it with the risen Christ, and you find it with the Madonna, with the baby. It's always a symbol of new life. You never have a crucifix in the middle of it. You never have. It's not a symbol of death, it's a symbol of new life. And it's so beautifully a symbol of meeting. And
it was on those crosses we saw yesterday.
It
was on those crosses that
we
saw yesterday.
Yes. They were on the floor as well. Yeah, absolutely. And so I use it as well as a symbol of past and future. I kind of like to see the past, that we're looking at the past and we feel the future. The future is what we cannot see. And the past, we see what we see through our eyes, which have been conditioned by our past. And the now is the moment, and that's the reality,
really
or the actuality. You gave me that term last year. I remember that. Reality and actuality. It's lovely.
It's really interesting because in Hindi we use this word kal, which refers to both tomorrow and yesterday. So we use the same word to say tomorrow and the same word for yesterday, but we know it by context what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be funny, but I mean, what I mean is it's interesting because there's something about the nowness and then kal as being this sort of symmetric about from the past and the future sort of thing there, where sure, past we know, but do we really? Future we don't know, but maybe we do.
Because we're making something.
So I was just thinking about that word. So
right.
I was like,
No, because I mean, in the Hopi language as well, there's this. Whoever it was saying it was built for quantum physics, really, because basically there's what do I know, what so they don't have tenses at all. There's no they don't actually have past, present, and future. There's kind of now what I know, and they see Then someone says, so someone I know, someone says and then there's like someone said once, or I've heard that over the hills, or maybe one time. So it's an uncertainty language. It's a certainty-uncertainty language rather than a tense, a temporal tense language. So it's very, very interesting. And so here I was also, this reality interaction. So, but the other thing I was starting to put here was this thing to do with objectivity and subjectivity and intersubjectivity. Because it seems to me that that's this whole thing about how we, if we're going to try to proceed on thinking, if consciousness precedes matter or matter and consciousness co-arise, then we need to be thinking about how we corroborate subjectivity, which is in the world of the intersubjective, which is what objectivity really is actually, because it's in language. We create languages, so how long have I got, Mark?
20 minutes now.
I've got about 20
minutes left.
20 minutes left. Okay. That's
Always
enough.
20 minutes.
Just ask you a question, 20 minutes. So let me see if. Let's have a look and see what's here. Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. It's going on to the Mahesvara. That's wonderful. This is.
There you go.
It's all unfolding beautifully. So I will say about. So I will speak about the Mahesvara. Say something first. So. So the Mahesvara is a sacred text. It's part of the Vedas, which are the Hindu books of wisdom. I became interested in the Vedas and Vedic mathematics actually from following Pythagoras. I knew that that there is no extant work of Pythagoras. So, but I knew that the Vedas exist, so one can actually go and check out the Vedas. And that's always nice if you can go and check things out. So then I enrolled for a Sanskrit course, and because obviously one needs to do that, and then I was interested in the Vedas per se as a way of proceeding, because they are spiritual texts, but they are also scientific texts. So it's one place where they are together, whereas what we have done is to split things off. We have, science, which has mainly been thinking about, matter. Oh gosh, let's have a look and break things, blah blah blah. Yes, there you go. It's time to bring that in just quickly now. So yes, so we've tended to break things up, but David Bohm actually pointed out that nature responds according to the way she's approached, and that a fragment is not the same as a part. In my unfinished doctorate, the way I put it was that a loaf of bread is not the same as a pile of coins. So, and it's interesting. So there is this question of how do we converse with nature? And Barbara McClintock, who I think got a Nobel Prize for, I think it was to do with a genome, but it was to do with corn, and she talked about how she listened to the corn. That's what she did. That she thought she was so fortunate that she was paid to go and listen to the corn. And I was just reading, and someone else actually recently who's, I don't know what a moss expert is, but yeah, so who was just saying, in order to study moss, when you look at moss, really it's more like listening. And we will come more onto the listening when I'm at Pamphlet. I mean, you come with Mark anyway. So, yes. So back to so that's how I came into the Vedas, and the Mahesvara. So this is. These are the Sanskrit alphabetic signs, which are symbols. And so studying, and the Mahesvara is the mantra of creation. And this is both physical creation, starting with A, which is Brahma, the creator. And it's also a spiritual or psychological creation. in other words, it's really a magic text, because, and I can vouch for this, because I recite it nearly every day, and have been doing so for about 25 years. And it is powerful. I mean, I find that, the first time I went to a session of Vedic sounding, it's the simplest meditation I know. It's very, very direct. Anyway, so now, what else did I wanted to say something else first. Where was it? Just investigating the mathematics of the Mahesvara. There are 14 mini sutras, and so investigating them as a mathematics, there's two ways. One is directly, which is what we do in our sessions of investigation, which are investigating the somatopsychological effects of sounding. You sound, basically, obviously you go into a certain relaxed space, certain kind of Alexander space, like sitting upright, because obviously you're allowing the flow, spine, etc., etc. And then you sound out loud 3 times, and then you sound in your mind 3 times, and then you notice the effects, and then we converse about the different effects, and so this is actually it is an investigation in this way. So if we just look at the symbol, because it's rather beautiful. So this is not the Mahesvara. This is Paramatmane Nama, and which means honor to the greater self. Atman is the highest, the individual higher self, and the Paramatman is the greater higher self, or the greater oneness that we're all part of.
Excuse me. How do you read? Is that a series of?
It reads from left to right, so it's not like Hebrew.
Of sounds, is it?
Yes. So here, I haven't done it very big, is it? Yes. So here, that's So I've transliterated it here. So so you can. I know. I'm sorry. It's almost invisible from back there.
No, it's just the language. How you actually just read that is as a series of, like we would have letters.
Oh, that's right. That's pa, that's ra, that's ma, and with the extra line there, it's ma. It's a long r, and that's the t, ma, ne, and that shows the a. So that's pa, ra, ma, ne, and that's na, ma, and that's interesting. Those 2 dots are the visarga. And the visarga is an important non-sound. It's when you let all the breath out. So that is actually that's that moment of the possibility of the new creation, because you let everything go, and something else can come in. Now, the reason I wanted to show this was because you've got the horizontal. The horizontal line comes from. No, I did it here, didn't I? I thought, It comes from the R. So the R, the creator, the Brahman. And again, you see, this is where, I would disagree with you, Andrew. R is obviously the beginning of the alphabet. I mean, if you say A, B, C, A isn't the beginning, but R clearly is, because it is the simplest sound that we can make. But what you see, so the R, right. Now, here, what I've written above, here is guttural, palatal, cerebral, dental, labial. And I'm trying to go more quickly now, which one really shouldn't with the Mahesvara, because we're going to just do the art in a little bit, and people can join in if they wish. But so the guttural the guttural sounds, I mean, just if you're not aware, the guttural sounds are made from the back of the throat. So they are, so the R is guttural, but the tongue is flat. But if the tongue is involved, it's at the back, so it's kind of ga, ka. In fact, that's about it, isn't it? Yeah, but you have aspirate as well. And then the palatal, the tongue is horizontal. So with the vowel, you've got I here, and then A, and then you've got ch here, nga, go down the base. So you've got these various sounds where you've got a horizontal tongue. And then you've got cerebral, that's where the tongue points up. So that's like or which we don't have in, or we don't have this in English. And apparently some Hindus say that's why everybody in England gets colds and things, because they don't have this cerebral spine which helps to clear. Which, got a point. Then there's dental, obviously, you know, the tongue touches the back of the teeth. And then there's labial, which is just, you know, oo, or w, b, just all those sounds, where the tongue is flat again, the tongue is relaxed again. And this is, so, I mean, just in terms of, so it's very interesting that you've got a 4 and a 1, so you've got these 5 basic placements, and you've got the 4 that involves the tongue and 1 that doesn't. So that is very interesting. Now, it's also interesting in terms of, so in terms of the spirituality or the, yeah, that effect, that you can look at the guttural as being related to the back of the spine, going down the spine. And that's, and again, you know, relating to the future, that's one would think about 3 worlds in the Vedas. So there's the world from which life manifests. So that's the R brings life into manifestation, which is both physical and psychological, spiritual. And so that's coming from back there, and that's is beautifully this sign, and it's a 3, you know, a 3ness. It's very, very interesting, and it comes out as this line, which, as we saw in the words, continues. I mean, except, you know, yeah, basically continues as a like that sound, and then but then the fact the vertical that comes in is the individual Atman. So that's so life comes from the great oneness, the Paramatman, and in the human, it manifests in us as our individual higher self, our Atman, and that's the vertical. And then the next one, so this is the first mini sutra. So there are 14 mini sutras. Sutra means thread. There are 14 mini sutras making up the mantra as a whole, or sutra as a whole. But in this first one, it's a, e, u, and it goes into the cerebral again. But so this one, which is Shakti, it's very interesting in terms of, again, in the symbol. For me, there's a question of whether this is actually a spiral. You've got the vertical that comes in, but it's not a hole. It goes into this curve, which crosses over, and there's that sense of spiral. And this is the U, which is the labial. So you've gone from the guttural to a palatal to a labial. So you've come into the whole, the manifestation, and then the cerebral. But that U is in a way still clear. It's not. It hasn't got the individual Atman in it. It's got this through flow. But I think should we do with Sahu?
Let's make sure I've got this right. So you're saying that there is a correspondence between the phonemes and the images
Yeah.
and the meaning.
Yeah.
There is complete correspondence here.
Well, these are
The sounds,
Yeah.
the pictures, and what this.
This is the alphabet.
Yes.
It's the Sanskrit alphabet. Yeah.
Yes. I didn't know that.
Ah.
Sorry.
Sorry. I obviously was not as clear as I might have. Yeah. No. This is the. Yeah. No. This is the but this is the Sanskrit alphabet in a particular form. It's which was. Was intuited by a rishi called Panini, and so each of these mini sutras represents or creates a different level of creation. So there are 14 that go through the, it's kind of related to our senses and to matter and lots of different things that I can talk with people afterwards who want to. But in the meantime, I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. Yeah, this is the alphabet. These are the Sanskrit letters, basically. But they're clearly so they're signs for the phonemes, and they're one-to-one signs for the phonemes. But they're also obviously but the thing and sound, in the beginning was the word, or sound is creative. I mean, even in Big Bang Theory cosmology, they talk about sound being there before transparency. So, but yeah, so Sahu and I are going to offer as a movement, and those who would like to join in are welcome to do so. Come on, Sahu. I forget.
Get my butt up. Move. I have to say your handwriting is beautiful, actually. It's really nice. Yeah.
Anyway, so if you'd like to do it, you could stand up and experience R, which is always a good thing to do, isn't it? Always good to get to one's feet moving. And so yes, I apologise, because obviously I usually do mini workshops more than presentations and get people to do things earlier on rather than at the end. We could have started that earlier, couldn't we? Anyway, so what we'll do, we're going to do an R just coming like from the great periphery in, like in, but then out again, because it is the whole. And then the I will be vertical, because that's the individual human actually experiencing our verticality. This is, and however we want to do that. And then the U is the horizontal, again, however we want to do that. But it's kind of, it goes, from future to past to future, from gul to gul. And then we'll close it with the U, which is this cerebral U. And that's, brings it to a close. So it then is a containment. It's so beautiful. So we'll say it and enact it, manifest it.
Okay.
So It that's that. Thank you. And thank you. All right, I love that.
Perhaps we could.
Wow.
Perhaps we could somehow.
Wow.
Pretty good.
We could, we can do the quaternions.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
But then to add sound.
But if we follow Peter, we'll all disappear if we do that.
No, but if we start looking at the sutras and the way they're arranged based on the four, the quaternions that you're talking about, maybe we'll find some patterns there. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
No, it is very interesting.
But it's kind of interesting how the E kind of reminds me of the human spine in a way, with the shape of it, and which talks about, it feels vertical.
Yeah.
And I don't know who, I remember someone was talking about it. Was it Mike yesterday? Was talking about bipedal as being conscious. So when the spine becomes vertical, something happens. I don't know. That's kind of weird. Yeah.